Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I thought I should do a little health update. Um, so everything's turned back to normal. I felt really good last night. Um, was able to do some exercise on the rebounder, which I was hesitant to do, and was doing it really slowly in the beginning, and I was able to do it a couple more times. And you know, we have my wife had gotten this little thing you put on your finger some time ago. We hadn't used it, and she had to go find and change the battery on it. But you can take your pulse, and you can it tells you your blood oxygen, which is would have been helpful when we had COVID. And these whenever these as you get older, sometimes you have shit like this, right? So I put it on last night, and I'm like, well, my oxygen level is down to 78. That's crazy. She had put it on before, and my pulse was back to normal. And then I realized that it said something like 96 or 97. I thought that was my pulse, but that was the oxygen, and my pulse was 78. So my rest, my regular pulse rate was like around 78, 80. When I did the rebounder, it gets up to about 90, and that's me being out of breath. And so I'm like everything's back to normal. But when I went into the place, just when we got to the place yesterday, it was one something, right? And it had slowed down significantly. So, my heart was racing for some unknown reason. But I think it's always been, it's not my heart, but the signal to my heart, like whatever's making the whatever. And so, I just feel like COVID just fucks with your electromagnetic, whatever the spike protein, whatever it is. These people who took the vax or who got COVID and, had this whatever issues where they had cardiac arrest, and out of nowhere, like all these died suddenly. People, I covered it so much on my other channel. I've done it again recently. No one gives a shit about that anymore, but it's still there, right? And maybe even more so. I don't think anything's wrong with their heart. I think that it's something's going wrong with their electrical system. So I had this acupuncture thing done yesterday to me, and I have this fucking thing on my chest right now monitoring my heart for like a week, and I don't know if I can last that long with it. And it's like having a fucking microchip on some kind of computer. There's something there that's computer oriented that's recording everything that your heart does, which I don't think it's really a heart issue, and I whatever. Um, and last night I had started to have like a liver or um, gallbladder spasm, maybe. I don't know. Like I started to bloat again for no reason. Like I didn't eat anything. I was just, and then when I lay down to go to sleep, and that was putting pressure on my heart. That's always been an issue with me, the bloating from fucking COVID. And so I was walking around for a bit, and I took all kinds of things that would help. Kefir, and we have various kinds of. We get some. There's a local guy who makes you know, uh, kimchi and sauerkraut and things, fermented foods, and I ate some of that, and I took some digestive enzymes and some things, just it was unexplicit. My stomach just bloats, and then that puts pressure on the heart area, and that's another whole fucking thing. And eventually I fell asleep, and I felt fine. But even now my stomach's got some rumblings, which is weird. Because I just drank a little bit of hot cocoa, like less than normal. But I want to say about all this that there's, I mean, there was, I think, some benefit to it. Like my wife and I are taking this more seriously, and whatever dietary changes. This holistic chiropractor, he was big on just eating a lot more roughage. I don't know what word I'm looking for. Not roughage, but more fiber. And we eat a lot of fiber. I make salads like 4 times a week, and we could have. I mean, I could start eating salads for lunch and whatever it is. And so all of that. So when he said that my cholesterol's high, I started taking. I got some cod liver oil. I'm going to take spoonfuls of that before meals. And we eat olive oil, and like there's the omega threes and the omega sixes, and the omega threes are the good fats. But I don't eat that much butter. You know, some cheese and milk, some dairy. Um, but I don't. There's not like anything in my diet that we're very health conscious, and um, you know, even more so than some of the people there that don't know some of the foods that we eat or some of the some of the theories. Like, but there's this train of thought that cholesterol isn't bad. You need cholesterol. This is the whole thing that's going on. There's the keto people and all this stuff and whatever it is. But our diet doesn't seem to be a problem. It's just whatever the adding more fiber, which is fine. Which I'm always willing to change things up. It's just it's good to get into habits. Like it's makes it a lot easier when you have regular type of meals and things you can make and whatever. But as it stands now, I don't know what caused my heart to just start fucking racing. Like there's nothing like there. It wasn't like I tried a bunch of caffeine or something like this, or I had some specific thing that I did out of the ordinary, or that's something to do with my supplements or something that just triggered my heart to just start racing. That's always a concern when you have something like that that's out of your control. I also I took a little melatonin. Again, I'm not telling people this is just what I'm doing. I'm not recommending anything, which I think helps slow everything down. So I have this melatonin cream, and I just take little bits of it. Like I don't, it has a big effect on me. Melatonin is what causes you to fall asleep. But if this is a spike protein thing, they just don't know what's it doing, right? There's the effect where people are having cardiac arrest and turbo cancer and shit, but they're not, forthcoming of how it can be dealt with in your body and things. And I'm taking some nanokinase and some stuff, that's supposed to be good against spike protein. It's not really as much of a concern. We're heading into it's been really warm. It was like 60 degrees yesterday. Beautiful day. I was in the parking lot of this, this healthcare place, this, holistic place. And my wife was finishing up with her. We both did an acupuncturist thing. And, I was walking up and down the sidewalk getting sun, and, my heart had calmed down, and it was, still going a little bit fast at that point. And it really relaxed when, I got back to normal when I got home. And I was just seeing these people. A lot of people are older, so, but it's, it's like a place where people are going for rehab and treatment. It's a complex of healthcare stuff, right? And I'm like looking at these people, I'm like, holy shit, right? Then some people are younger than me, and they're just, some of them are obese, some of them are, I'm like, oh, fucking, just the whole thing, like just how people, it's just bad. It's like going to Walmart, but, with sick people, and you see these people are suffering. Like, and I don't, like so many people are just suffering from physical. You can just see that they can barely, they can barely walk and get back and forth to their car. And, this one person's coming. I'm like, this looks like person looks like a fucking ghoul or a zombie. Some young woman. And I'm like, fuck. I just was walking up the sidewalk, and I decided to go the other direction. I don't want what they have. I don't want what she has. Fucking, So there's that, and there's two more things. So there's a thing, hiatal hernia, where your stomach goes through your diaphragm, like your part of your stomach. And after the guy pulled, it's painful to have it pulled down. There's chiropractors who know how to pull and it's not pleasant. And the guy had this little sonic thing that he used above my diaphragm to tighten it up. And like it was sore for y'all yesterday and the day before when he did it. So, and I don't know if that caused this, I just speculating about some of the things that could have, triggered this. But the bigger thing, and this is why I'm saying all this, I'm fine. So there's lots of comments. One person said, you should be wary of vitamin E. because it can cause heart damage and something else. And I'm like, I'm only taking like one, one with the taurine. Like I used to take like taurine like 3 times a day with vitamin E, but I cut back probably 6 months ago or whatever. I'm just trying to get rid of supplements. Like I'm just taking too many. It's a pain in the ass, and but you can take too much of stuff. Like that's the other thing. Like that's part of the whole issue. You have to always be monitoring. It could be, it could build up or whatever. So there's all that. But in all that, the one thing that I would say, there's this Whispers prediction coming up on the 28th. If it's to the day, 25 years, there's going to be a big event. And somebody wrote and said, well, they looked at the, astrological chart, and that's supposed to be a big day, and, whatever. So, and I don't know if it's going to be to the day, and it could be. And then, I don't know if it should be or whatever. He said in 25 years, there'll be a big thing. And you can feel stuff building, like something's fucking, and I'm going to show you some random clips from last night. Like just everything's imploding, right? Things are fucking going south. Lots of things are happening, whatever it is. So, when people see it, like it's unsteady, it's unstable, right? And before 9/11, I went through something 2 weeks before 9/11. I think, about 2 weeks. I had like a bad couple of days, one really bad day. And maybe I was even like panicked, right? Like what I experienced could be considered a panic attack. There's one of the, one of the preceptors of the Sajmark system. This guy, he was like a legitimate rocket scientist, but he was he's not into it. Like he told me this like funny story of his manager. He ended up becoming a manager, right? Because the Sajmark system, a lot of the people had better jobs than they should have. Like the third master said, Babaji is giving you guys all better jobs than you deserve. These people are making millions of dollars. And it happened to this guy where he had to do some kind of rocket scientist thing. He works like with MIT or for MIT. Like he was a literal rocket scientist. And he did this thing, and he said it was way harder. It was just beyond his mental capacity, but he just saw it, and he just had this brilliant epiphany, and he presented it to the people, and they were like so impressed with him. But he's a complete slacker, and so he ended up getting a better job than he deserved. And he realized he had this management book, and it just talked about how to deal with real smart people, and it was just like completely, like if he was sitting with this like a table full of these scientists, if they give him a suggestion, he'd be like, "Oh my God, I never thought of that. Wow, that was amazing." Because all these guys want to be the smartest guy in the room, like their intellect and their mental capacity is their self-esteem, and they're all really smart. They're all really have high IQs, and they're really and they have specific math and science skills, right? It's a specific kind of intelligence, and they all think they're smarter than everyone else. It's a whole thing. And then there's people who have been the smartest person in the room their whole life, and then they come together with all these ultra mathy science people, and so he would allow his people that were under him just to do whatever work and give them whatever credit. Like oftentimes the managers would try to take credit, but like he didn't care, and he would just sit back and just fucking let his team do everything. Like he had this like great thing, and he talked about this book. It's kind of funny, but he he had these panic attacks, and he went to the hospital. His heart was racing. So this is he's about my age. It was back when I was in my 30s. He was in his 30s, and he wrote to Master Charge. He said that you have this fear of drowning, and it's coming up, and like it's being cleaned out or whatever. And the guy stopped drinking caffeine, like because he drank a lot of coffee, and so he had this thing twice where he had these panic attacks. Sometimes you can have a panic attack and not know it. I don't think that was what it was, but if it was that, on 9/11 I had something 2 weeks ahead of time, and then when 9/11 came, I was at work, and I was completely calm, like I was just not affected, like everyone was flipping out, and I was just like, it was like I experienced what everyone else experienced 2 weeks before it happened. Like I just, and this has happened a number of times with personal things where I had a really bad day and then something like really traumatic happens and I'm like calm during that experience. Like it's just like I was prepared for it. So, with this upcoming thing that's about to happen, I thought that this, could be tied to that, like one never knows, like we don't have control over things. It's basically it, even our own bodies. We'd like to, but there's always, a greater good. That's why I always say be grateful. Okay, so I think that's enough about that. Let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so last night I had trouble. I was really tired, so I went to bed early. And I usually go to bed after my wife, and I went before. And then I was just, I did some cleaning, and then there was something I had to do on my phone I forgot to do. And so I pulled it back out, and then I just scrolled through Twitter for a little bit. Because then it was like I was really sleepy, and then I pulled out of it. And, it's something I just discovered at the doctor's office, because there's lots of good video clips and memes and things that I can find for this. So I found 3 things. I'm going to put them in, I'm going to just cover them in the order. They're kind of all related and not. But they're just telling things that I saw last night, just these clips. And it's also kind of indicative of the end of the world type of stuff, right? Like, apocalyptic stuff, like just things falling apart. So, I'm probably putting this video up today. Today is Thursday, the 19th. So more than likely I'm putting that up today. And, schedule-wise, this video will go up tonight. Might be a shorter video. Like, I'm just going to take it easy with whatever. But I feel normal, so, I mean, whatever. And then I'll skip tomorrow, which will be Friday. And then, I may post a video on my other channel, I may not, or just something short about my health. Just the people that, for some reason, there's people that don't want to come over here from there. It's people who like my other channel, even though it's kind of basically the same content. They like me over there, but not here, whatever. So, but anyways, we'll see what happens. But this guy, Glenn Beck, he was just, I remember Glenn Beck when Alex Jones was popping, when Alex Jones was the center of the truther community. Like he just sucked up all the oxygen. And all the people were trying to get on his show, all the truthers, not all of them, but, many of them. And it was before, it was obvious that he was a complete shill. Like, it was obvious that he was performing. He when he went through his divorce, his lawyer said he's a performance artist, right? Which is problematic when you're a truther because you can't be embellishing you can't be acting, right? You can't be playing a part. And, and anybody who feeds people's fear, Chicken Little shit that he does, and anger and hate, right? People who feed negative emotions is a piece of shit, no matter what you are, no matter what your belief system, no matter if you're left or right or whatever. It's always better to calm things down. It's never good to, make people fucking, to fan the flames, right? It's just a bad thing. Human beings are emotional. We'll do emotionally bullshit things. You can't encourage people to go do crazy shit, right? Like even when things are falling apart, you have to remaining calm is, essential. Like just, keeping a cooler head, right? So, like yesterday, my video, my wife, had made an appointment to go to the doctor thing, and I didn't really want to go because I thought it might lead to me going to the hospital. Right, like even alternative people, when like push comes to shove, they'll rely on, this chiropractor. Like he had a heart thing. What he was talking about, he's got a cardiologist, right? Even though he does his own alternative stuff, like he said, he doesn't take the allopathic pills. People rely on allopathic medicine, which is great for diagnostics, like blood work and things. So. I didn't want to go to the hospital because I know they weren't going to find anything, and I would just make it worse. Like I would take my anxiety level and my, discomfort to another level, right? And so I was posting my video, and I realized that in my last voiceover, I said, my ending thing, be grateful, that stuff, right? My ending thing. And I forgot to, because the night before I made a voiceover that was going to end the video, but then I covered more stuff the next day in a voiceover. And so I needed to, get rid of that ending, right? So people would realize there was still more to the video. And I forgot to do that, and I went and edited it. And while I was doing it, it got copyrighted. And instead of leaving the video up and finding out where the copyright was, I immediately deleted it and was trying to remake it. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. And I was already making the Journey series on my, which takes like a 2-hour video takes a while to render. And so, like, I made an impulsive decision instead of, I immediately just deleted the video. I'm like, why'd you do that, right? And so because I was, kind of in a state of like, exasperated, right? So it's always good to think and take a deep breath and hit the pause button when you get into a situation where you're in crisis mode. But anyways, let's get into this stuff here.
I at times have felt impressions from God, and about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Okay, so this guy is the worst. So when Alex Jones was in his heyday, like I was saying, this guy copied Alex Jones. And he made it all about Soros, and he had these fucking things he used to do on Fox News. And he was the worst. He was trying to be a truther, but, right-wing and radicalized. And he really popped on Fox News, but he got too crazy for them. And he was, he was just a really a sanctimonious piece of shit, like fucking horrible. Sucky. He just sucked. Like he was, he was, the original sort of person that came and took the truth community and exploited it in a dishonest way, right? And so for him to say that he gets these impressions from God, but listen to what he's going to say. Let's go back to it here.
I at times have felt impressions from God, and about 4 or 5 weeks ago, it was overwhelming. I know why I was born. This
You got to wait for it here.
is why you are here. This is why you were born. And it is to stand at these times and to stand for the truth and to stand, not to sound grandiose, but to stand.
You're totally set right to sound grandiose. You're saying that, you were connected to God, and God's telling you this is what you're supposed to do.
And as other people in history have stood, especially for the Jewish people.
Are you shitting me? Are you fucking shitting me, bro? Wowza.
Stand as other people in history have stood, especially for the Jewish people. And it is humbling, a little bit terrifying, but a relief to finally know.
All right, so this guy's just so greasy. Like he's greasy. Like he's a greasy motherfucker. And he's at PragerU, and PragerU had, Charlie Kirk. I don't know. It's a very Zionist. I don't really know that much about it. I've heard Candace Owens talk about it, and it's a kind of a contentious, something contentious there. I'm not sure where it is, but Charlie Kirk was, was one of his handlers. The guy who runs it. There's a whole thing, right? Not familiar with it, other than that. There are people in history that act as villains, right? But they're really higher developed souls. So, there was this thing that happened, and there was a book that was called Conversations with God. And it was some guy who just asked God, to explain things to him. And he wrote it down. It was kind of maybe like a new age thing, but I don't know what the guy was, his orientation, but he got some legitimate answers. And one of them was he asked about Hitler, and he said that Hitler was actually some kind of a higher developed soul, which all villains and people are. Even if they're fallen, sometimes it could be fallen, right? And somebody asked Master Chargy about it, the third master Sizemore system, and he said, this guy seems to have connected with Babaji, second master system, who is running all these types of things. It's like all these intercommunity things and whatever. Believe it or not, this is just the system. I mean, I'm not. This is this I'm just reporting stuff that that I know was said. And he said that that Hitler's soul was now, a part of. It lived at the ashram. Like there's these young guys called inmates, and they were people who lived at the ashram, and they lived there. They weren't charged rent. There was these they did volunteer work, like college kids that were taking a gap year, and like some of them were incredible. Some of the people there, like one of them was a lower caste guy, and he worked with me on the container gardens. He didn't speak much English, but he had a beautiful family, and he had been pulled out of poverty by Master Chargy, but he was obviously a spiritual person who was born in a lower caste, and his kids were going to go to the school for free. This private school that Chargy started, and they were being taken out of their lower caste system, and they were going to be elevated in society by this this whatever it was, the being able to live there. And there was this other young guy that helped me and my family when we had a visa crisis, and the guy Skyped me out of nowhere, like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know when Skype ended, so I know Skype doesn't exist, but. And he just Skyped me and said, "How you doing?" Like he was always checking up on me. He's like a 25-year-old kid, right? Really, just saintly. I mean, just these, you know, amazing people that were there. Some of them, not all of them, but there were these three people called inmates. And Chargy said Hitler was one, and he had been a rishi, which is a higher developed soul in a past life, and was chose for this work. And what this guy reported in conversations with God, that sometimes there's this negative energy that has to be discharged. And, on planet Earth, there's this divine drama of good versus evil, and some soul has to play the villain, right? I've talked about this. Krishna is this soul Vishnu, and he had this, Krishna had this guy that was always insulting him, and his mother was a devotee of Krishna. She loved Krishna, but her son hated him. And the guy was always insulting him. And Krishna said, because of his mom, I'll let him insult me 100 times, but on the 100th time, he's dead. I'll kill him. He's got this. Krishna had this disc he'd pull out, and the guy came in, and when, like Krishna said, "Today's your day, Shishupal." Like this, he was he was like at 97 insults, right? And he came in, started talking shit to Krishna, and Krishna pulled out his disc and killed him. But anybody Krishna killed was liberated. They were free from their earthly bondage. And it turned out this soul of Shishupal was a soul that was around Vishnu. It was worked with Vishnu, this soul that was the cosmic functionary, the god of preservation, right? And this soul was told by Vishnu, you can either incarnate with me 10 times as my friend or 3 times as my enemy. And the soul said, "Oh, fucking, I only want to go to Earth 3 times, right? If I have a choice between 10 and 3, I'm only going to go 3." And so he came down as his enemy, and then the last life was Shishupal, and he was liberated, right? So, there's this idea that some of these villains are playing a part, and, right now the part they're playing, like Donald Trump, they could be higher developed souls and whatever, and they're playing this part because they can't know they're playing a part, right? So, I don't really try to or claim that I can say what a person's purpose is, right? Like, I don't know what your purpose is, and, like, I can find out what my purpose is, but I don't know what Glenn Beck's purpose is, right? And so I don't know what his relationship with God is. But he's so fake and so sanctimonious and so fucking greasy. And he has no clout. Like Glenn Beck standing up for Israel does fucking nothing, right? Like he's not going to change the fucking needle. So he's just a kiss ass. This is, in claiming that God told you, you got to stand for Israel, right? Like it's silly. Like it ain't coming from fucking God, right? I mean, whatever destructive shit that's there, but it's this the divinity that it resides in all people is not represented in the Jewish religion. The God that's presented in the Jewish religion is a demon, right? It's a narcissistic demon. It's not God. And the God that Glenn Beck worships is that same God, if he worships a God at all. He's just some fake fuck. And so, so there's that, right? That's to start off with. Okay, so finally somebody said, I don't know, this guy's a senator or something. I don't know who he is.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage the press to go look at these allegations. And I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well,
Did he say that? Did Todd Blanche go and say, hey, who wouldn't party with Jeffrey Epstein? Remember that guy, Nick Fuentes, saying Jeffrey Epstein was the coolest, coldest guy ever. Like fucking, like Jesus Christ. Of course, like I've said this over and over again. Trump is creepy with women, and there's I have that whole fucking long, it's like an hour long compilation. I don't know if I'll play it today. I don't feel like playing it today, but there's a video in which he talked about hiring a 15-year-old girl because he was attracted to her, and like having that girl around was like, crack to a crackhead or alcohol to an alcoholic. That's his addiction. And he's had creepy stuff with women, said creepy stuff to fucking, and then what he said about Jeffrey Epstein. Like he has incriminated himself. He's just telling you what he is. Trump has never hid who he is. Like he's pretended to be, one of these people, right? There's all these people that are, fake truthers and, whatever. He's pretended to be one of these people, but in an obvious way that he's not, right? He's not hiding it. Like it's just people's complete ability to rearrange reality to make Donald Trump into something he's not, right? And what he is a creep, and he was besties with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was, partaking. Like he was doing part of that. He was doing that shit that these guys were all doing. Whatever they were doing, whatever Jeffrey Epstein was doing, Trump was doing. Maybe not the same specific things, but he's, it's, what this is? This is an orientation, right? Like when people talk about the way that the term goy is used, that like you're cattle, you're like everybody who's not Jewish is, like some kind of a lesser than, right? Is you're like cattle, you're like livestock, you're like you're there to be exploited, and you're not part of the chosen group. All these people have that attitude, whether they're Jewish or not, whether it comes from religious. I mean, it even says it in Christianity to whatever extent. Like everyone else is going to hell, right? It's a way to demean everybody else. Oh, we can do whatever we want because we're saving you. My wife just called to check on me. That's what the sound was. See if I was okay, and I am. I feel great. I really felt blessed out last night. I should say that too. Like there's usually when everything just got better. But this idea that Christians believe that their only path to heaven was through Jesus. And so they had these missionaries and these missions, and they would take liberties with these native peoples and people, these, whoever it is, because they felt like we're saving you. We're giving you Jesus. So, we can exploit you. You're heathens. You're going to hell. We're saving you from hell. Right. So it's not true. It's not, I talked about this thing with my mom. We were in Ottawa, and there's these Native American people up there. And, they were doing some kind of a dance or something, right? Some kind of, and my mom was looking at them, and she was like, look at these beautiful people. I don't believe that they're going to hell. And I'm like, because I didn't understand John 3:16. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? Of course they're not going to hell. You know, why would, I mean, like, I don't know whether they're going to hell or heaven, but like, And then I realized years later what she was talking about. But she was having her own moment where she was calling bullshit. She was a devoted Catholic on the Catholic rhetoric, which is bullshit, right? There's plenty of spiritual people outside of what you do. And there's spiritual people all over the world. And, they're not celebrated. They're not honored. And when people meet, like a powerful people meet spiritual people, they're like, well, let's kill this motherfucker and take his teachings and exploit it to our own ends, right? This is what happens. And so these people have this attitude, these demonic people, that everyone's there for their pleasure, right? Everything's there at their disposal, whether it be the wildlife and, the resources that are there, whether it be like lumber or oil or something, commodities, or whether it be other people, land, whatever, gold, it's there for them. They have a demonic, selfish, you know, greedy, gluttonous attitude, and they just want to consume. And those are the people that were around Jeffrey Epstein, and that's the kind of person Trump is. And to think that Trump is better than Jeffrey Epstein, and he's worse. He's going to have a worse effect on the world than Jeffrey Epstein is. And so this whole thing is silly. You got fucking played. You got duped by this fucking demon. So whatever.
Not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty, because patronizing is part of the law, the federal sex trafficking law. So Deputy General Tablanche just got that wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump. He needs to read the law and investigate these people. He also needs to resign, not only for not knowing the law, but a massive, not only screw up, but the biggest privacy violation in history. They release a lot of pictures of minors unredacted, just violated the privacy of these girls. It is uncalled for what they did.
Uncalled for. It's uncalled for. Dude, I appreciate what you're doing, but you're not nailing it. It's totally uncalled for. What do you mean, releasing child pornography of victims of Jeffrey Epstein? Yeah, like that's uncalled for.
The one thing that they could not do under this law was to invade the privacy of these women now, who were girls at the time, who were victims of sex trafficking. Also, he met with Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell moved her to a minimum security prison and then got a puppy for her. So for all those reasons,
She is a puppy. Wait, does Ghislaine Maxwell have a puppy? Does Ghislaine Maxwell have a puppy? All right, I'm going to look that up next, but there's one more thing I want to show you here. Like this is how fucked things are, right? But of course, when Marjorie Taylor Greene and these other people are still trying to claim Donald Trump is just defending his friends and all that. I mean, just fucking stupid. Just, my God, like, are you that fucking clueless? He's a piece of shit. He's a demon, right? Okay, so this is the funniest of the three. The most that you could say about Trump, going back to what I was saying before, is that he's a demon who is playing a part. I mean, he's a higher developed soul that's playing a part of a demon for the destruction of America, right? But, he's still playing the part of a demon, right? Whatever his sole purpose is. I mean, the system has to be taken down, and the people taking it down are doing God's work, but unintentionally, right? Whatever. But here,
he's really been great, and Howard has built one of the great companies, Cantor Fitzgerald. It was wiped out, completely wiped out, other than a few people left in Europe. And he rebuilt the company into a bigger, better company. Cantor Fitzgerald is one of the most, absolutely one of the top.
So this is Howard Lutnik, who's been fingered in the, Jeffrey Epstein thing. And Trump is backing him up because he's, that's what he would do. This guy was at Jeffrey Epstein's island. He was his neighbor. He was completely Epstein, right? He's like one of these people who should be, arrested.
Top companies on Wall Street, stocks, bonds, trading. And he took that, he literally watched the plane go into the building, go into the World Trade Center.
Because he He was flying it with a drone. Was he flying it with a drone? This is where Trump he screws people. And I don't know if Trump's doing this on purpose, if he's trolling, which would be hilarious. I don't think he is. But he's just fucking this guy over, right? You know, Trump used to pretend to be a truther. He has flirted with the truth community, but he doesn't understand it, right? Like, he doesn't understand the anger that people have towards the so-called elite. He thinks the elite are great. He loves the elite. The elite are his people. The elite are the people he cares about. If he cares about anybody other than himself, it's the elite people. He cares about their opinions. He cares about them. You know, whatever. Like he said about Hillary Clinton, he protected her, right? He says he's there for you, and he knows, you know, he's lying to you, but, you know, maybe he just does it so thoughtlessly that his bullshit and grifting. But the people he cares about are the elite. But sometimes he just says shit which this guy knows isn't good what he's about to say, right?
Plane going to the building, going to the World Trade Center. Amazing story. That alone is an amazing story. He was delayed because his wife insisted that he finally, after years, take his child to school. So he took his child to school that one day, because normally he would have been in the building at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's that business, right? So you owe your wife a lot and your child a lot, right? But his wife insisted that he take his child to school. For 5 years he didn't do it. He was horrible. What kind of a father was he? Okay, I'll do it. And he was therefore driving down at 8:43, whatever the time was, down the West Side Highway, and he saw the plane go into the side of the building. He said, wow. And he occupied the top 3 floors of the World Trade Center, of the one building of the World Trade Center. And you know what happened there? He lost 100% of the people in that, his whole company was there. And he rebuilt his company.
Holy fuck, right? Holy shit. You know, and he's laughing, but he's got to be like, oh, Jesus, shut the fuck up, bro. I mean, maybe he doesn't care. At least, no, there's no fucking, you know. But here this guy is, this, you know, this Zionist businessman who is a piece of shit and doesn't drive his kids to school. Just that one day. But all the other people, God spared this motherfucking Jeffrey Epstein, next door neighbor, this piece of shit, right? He spared this fucking guy. You know, I mean, there's a connection between the Zionists, the 5 dancing Israelis, all that stuff. The handheld nukes. I've talked about this in my. You can go check out my video on Apocalypse Now. I redid my videos. You know, the information there. And that one day he happens to be late. Like, he's there every fucking day. He's there, you know, before the plane would have hit. Not fucking, you know, before the fucking thing, right? Before the big event. And that day he's not. Everybody else who works for him, but 2 other people, so Trump said 3 people. He had nothing, but 3 people were saved. All his employees, all his business, all his records, all his tax fraud, all his, you know, Building 7 had like Enron shit. You guys remember there's a big Enron scandal. Like, there's all this shit that burned up in all these investigations, all this federal, there was like a whole, you know, there was all this financial crime that burned up that day. You know, Building 7 just fell for no reason. Remember that shit. But Trump just fucking destroyed it, just in terms of the truth stuff. And this guy's just got Epsteined. Like, he's been targeted, named. He had to go answer in front of Congress about his relationship. He went to Epstein Island. He was there. You know, Trump said, "I didn't go to Epstein Island. No, you know, I don't know what about him, but you know, this fucking thing." But this fucking guy, right? Just said something like, you know, it's not believable. And he has lots of people who are truthers, you know, right-wing truthers or whatever that supported him. And, you know, I mean, he just incriminated the shit out of this guy. Trump does this all the time, and I don't know if he's just that fucking clueless or he's fucking this guy over. It's hard to say with Trump, right? Like, if he's, you know, I mean, either he's just so fucking clueless, he says shit like this, even though he's supposed to know about truther narratives. There's people out there, of course, Erica Kirk's one of them, they just don't understand the truther mentality. But they have truthers that are part of their audience, at least right-wing Cubies and people that don't believe in the official story.
Step by step over years, and became bigger and stronger, and he gave a tremendous amount of the profit to the families of the people that died. which he didn't have to do. And now he's working with us. He did an incredible job. I mean, anybody in that world, they know Howard Lutnik very well.
Yeah, that fucking world. That fucking world. Yeah, those fucking. That's everyone in that fucking world. Those fucking depraved motherfuckers. They all know Howard Lutnik. Holy shit. All right. That was wonderful. That A fucking plus, right? Okay, so let me just go back here. I want to talk about this. The Prince Andrew thing's coming up next, where he gets arrested. Big news. In the year of accountability, it's already the initial dominoes are falling, right? Kind of, it is certainly something, right? But it's going to be much bigger than this, But I want to talk about physical suffering, and in the Sajmark system, physical suffering, illnesses, and then other traumas and difficulties you go through it pulls out things inside of you. My voiceovers, all my things will be on point today. I'll be clearer of thought, like it just always happens. When I have a migraine, and kind of what I had yesterday was another, like another form of these migraines that I get, which is a kind of a physical glitch out. There's always like a release of serotonin and clarity and like pleasant vibrations that I feel, like just this nice, as out of whack as I felt before, I feel completely like harmonious. Like it's a thing that happens constantly. There's always the bliss. In the Sajmark system, the pain, this hangover comes first, and then the blissful experience comes second. It's like one of the gifts of it, right? But, running away from pain or running away from miseries, miseries are divine blessings is one of the maxims. And so it's something you have to deal with. No one wants miseries, but they people's traumas, people's challenges, people's obstacles that they have to overcome, it makes you into whatever, it makes you into whatever great person you might become, right? Saintly person that you might become. Master Charge, the third master, who was schooled at a Christian school, he went to a Christian school in India. He talked to, and he was St. Paul in a previous life. He said that, every Christian should be willing and wanting to suffer the crucifixion, suffer what Jesus suffered. Of course, Jesus' disciples all suffered some sort of, crucifixion, either a crucifixion or something like it, in terms of their, persecution. Christianity has it backwards. They want to cut you a good deal, like a bullshit deal, and saying that Jesus suffered for you. Jesus suffered for your sins. Oh wow, I don't have to suffer my own sins. I'll give them to Jesus, right? Like that's. It's a very selfish orientation towards. What person would want Jesus to suffer their sins, right? When I was being made a preceptor years ago, I had this severe stomach ache. Like I was, being cleaned out, and I got this really sharp pain in my stomach. And Chargy, who I was interacting with, he was giving me some of these sittings. I heard he was suffering the same thing, and I knew like it was probably for me, and I felt bad about it, right? Like I didn't want him to, I didn't want to add to his burden. But in a true master-disciple relationship, you want everything that your master has, like everything that your teacher has, right? So whatever Jesus suffered, whatever Jesus endured, whatever Jesus had, you want that same thing. You want that same experience. Like it's, you love somebody, you want to suffer for them, right? You want to, not only that, you want to go through what they went through, right? It's like, there's empathy there, but it's also, Jesus is carving out a path for you. And so if his path towards divinity involves this crucifixion, then, all Christians should embrace it instead of holding up a cross and saying, look at how great Jesus is. He suffered for me. It's to endure what he endured, to have whatever your master had, right? Like that's, it's a spiritual principle. And so, like suffering is, like I said, undesirable, but it's what makes us better, right? You look at people who are really wealthy and they just have all these privileges. They're born with entitlements and they're fucking horrible people. Or people who are great people and then they get wealthy and then they're horrible people again, right? And so life without suffering makes a person, shitty person. And, when my heart rate went down yesterday, like I couldn't tell you how great it was. Like something I would take for granted going, oh my God, my heart's beating normally. Like your heart's beating constantly. Just like when I had COVID and I would have these issues with breathing, you take breathing for granted until you can't do it, right? And then all of a sudden, when you're able to take a clear breath, a deep breath, you're like, oh my God, that's so great. It's wonderful. You appreciate, like, these things make you appreciate things, make you appreciate life, right? Whenever you have like a near-death experience, you see life in a totally different way. You celebrate it, right? Instead of like, whining. My brother used to always say, there's people whining, oh my God, I don't think I should even live, and I just want to, people are like suicidal and whining, and you're just doing it in some way, being depressed. And then you drop a tiger into the room, and then the first one up a fucking tree, right? Like they're the first, they're running over people, like they're throwing people to the ground so that they can, here, tiger, eat this old lady. And so so there's that. All right. Anyways, let's with that in mind, let's get it to Prince Andrew here.
Britain's former Prince Andrew has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, now known as.
Okay. So very important. Like, this is why when you cover things like this, you guys don't have to think about this, right? Like, you're not doing this for a job, so whatever. And so the details matter. I'm not a detailed person, but when I heard he got arrested, my first thought was, what was he arrested for? Because it's very important, right? So let's listen to this again, because he's going to say what he's arrested for.
Britain's former Prince Andrew has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
Okay, so a couple of things there, right? Former Prince Andrew, like, he's already been stripped, like, already fucking, he's been defrocked, like he's already been humiliated, but is it enough, right? And so, like, he's, there's that. But there's two things he could have been arrested for. This one, which had to do with the Epstein files and his whatever it was with Jeffrey, things he did with Jeffrey Epstein and this girl and these things, right? The other one would be selling secrets. And, it's like whatever they charge you with or whatever the rest is very telling. Like, he's getting a good deal here because selling secrets is fucking treason. It would be a treasonous act. Like, it would fucking be bad. If he was selling state secrets and then would come out, and that would be bad for him and the royal family. But it'd also be bad for Israel, and it would name Mossad, because it would say Jeffrey Epstein was connected to Mossad, and that would be something America couldn't stop from acknowledging. That is that if it's England saying Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad, and he was getting secrets of these motherfuckers, then every one of these people like Trump and all these people, certainly, governmental officials, I mean, the Clintons, that treason would be on the table for them too, which is it's not only punishable by death, but like that's bad, and then that's bad for Israel, and it's fucking horrible for Israel, right? And so, are they protecting Andrew at this point? Are they protecting Israel? Like, what's going on here, right? To make it a lesser charge, because he gave away state secrets. There's no question about this. Like, Jeffrey Epstein gave him money, gave Fergie money. They got money, bribes, and also, he was blackmailable with these girls and things. I mean, just retarded, just stupid, like really bad decision making. And he was vulnerable at a lot of levels. And, one way he can pay Jeffrey Epstein back is information, right? Like, these people don't have a lot of money. The royal family as a unit has money. Like, if you're in there, like, he's kicked out of the royal family, he doesn't have any fucking money. Like, he doesn't have any, it's all fucking, royal family shit, all those castles. Like, it's like welfare. It's government housing, right? It's owned by the government, but the royal family and the people they call the firm, it's these people who are handlers. It's a group of people that, handle the royal family and make them stay on message. As a royal family member, you can't come in and say like a bunch of radical shit, truther shit, liberal shit, conservative shit. You got to just, you got to say things you got to stay on message. And if they, when they kick you out, they might give you some money or something. Like, if you leave the royal family, you might get some little whatever they can give you, but they really don't have anything to give. They have a fortune, but it's like a company. It's like, you're a CEO of a company. You get to fly in the private jets. You get scandalized, The next thing you know, you're flying commercial, right? Like it's unless of course they give you these big payouts, but it's not the same. You're flying on the corporate dime because it's corporations can employ pilots and people to captains of yachts and crews and people like that, right? It costs a lot of money to operate these types of things. To live in that kind of fortune. That these royal families, these dukes and duchesses. You saw it with that show, Downton Abbey. They were starting to go broke because without the abuse that they were imposing on their slave-like labor, when people started to get rights and you had to fucking pay people and shit, they couldn't afford those places, those estates, right? And they weren't good business people. They lived beyond their means, lavish, and they'd have to sell their castles, and they'd have to marry wealth, like they have to marry American money or something, nouveau riche wealth. This is what happens, and so, this is a big statement here because if it's not about state secrets, and we'll see what the indictment says, and it's a different kind of court system there, then Israel gets off the hook here, and so does Andrew. Like it's not as bad, but it could be that. Like they can add charges if people are like, no, fuck that, he stole state secrets. It depends how far they're willing to go and how much they want to fuck Israel over. Because as soon as Jeffrey Epstein is legitimately tied to Mossad in Israel, Israel's got a lot of fucking questions to answer, right? They're already fucking hemorrhaging. They're already on their fucking back foot. They're backpedaling. And, there's terms of public opinion. And when that becomes official, which it inevitably will have to be, we'll see.
Now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, he was taken into custody in Norfolk just a short while ago. He is accused of allegedly sharing confidential information with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
So there's that part, right? So that's the second piece. So, like them wording it that way, like it has to be, is this going to involve Israel? Like it's not a treasonous charge, right? It's, again, they're not charging him with misconduct in terms of like the sexual abuse. They're charging him with misconduct in terms of state secrets. And so that's a treasonable offense. And then what did Jeffrey Epstein do with them? Like, was he connected to a foreign government? Like, are they going to say that? These are the things that, as this comes out and moves forward. And even if the information comes out, does it become a big story? Do they bury the part about Mossad, right? Do they, mention it or it's part of it, but they don't really talk about it? It doesn't, so we'll see how this all plays out. But once Mossad and Israel are involved, like it's a whole nother fucking deal, right?
Mountbatten Windsor has previously denied any wrongdoing over his ties to Epstein. King Charles had stripped his brother of his titles back in October and has since evicted him from Windsor. Let's get back down to CNN's Salma Abdulaziz, who joins us live in London. Salma, what's the latest that you're hearing?
I want to start by asking maybe questions of what we don't know and what we do know so far. So we do know that he's been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, but there's a lot of details that are still missing here, of course, Rahel. We don't know the specifics of the allegations of this investigation by the police. We're talking about a period of time between 2001 to 2011 when he was representing the UK as a trade envoy. But what are the specific allegations, the specific accusations of misconduct? We don't yet know that. What information actually prompted Thames Valley Police to make this arrest? That's the...
Okay, so, like, what that means is, like, if it comes out that he gave Epstein information that didn't hurt Britain, but helped Epstein in business, right? Because, England was going to do this, and it was going to affect the markets this way. If they're there, he gave him some information that would help him business-wise, right? Like insider trading, because that's what his role was here. That's one thing. But if it's state secrets that could hurt Britain's interests, and it went to a foreign government like Mossad, like Israel, then that's a whole nother fucking thing, right? That's that's being an agent, a double agent, right? That's working to undermine your own country. That's treasonous behavior. It all can be considered treasonous. I don't know what the laws are there, but in America it is, right? But, this is fucking, this guy probably is going to prison. I don't know what kind of fucking prisons they have there, but, he's probably going.
key question here, because we understand that they have been assessing this claim for some time now, I would say a period of days. That latest trove of emails where we see these allegations come to light has been out for a few weeks now. So what was the trigger? What was the switch? What was it that the police held on to that said, okay, now is the time when we need to take this very extraordinary action, of course, in this country? We also don't know where Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is currently being held. We don't know where he is being held. We simply know that he's been arrested, but we don't know any details beyond that or what the status of that is in terms of his arrest. And we still don't know if he's been interviewed under caution. That's what it's described as in this country. So essentially, has he been asked questions? Has he sat down with a police officer and been...
So I would assume that, I mean, this isn't coming he's being sacrificed here and whatever, this is, he's had to pay this family, this woman, 12, this girl who was Epstein, whatever her name is. If I can't, I'll think of it later. But the girl I'm talking about. The family is, coming out. They're applauding this thing here. He had to pay her $12 million, but he said he was admitting nothing. He was just doing whatever, and that was embarrassing. But this is when they had Meghan Markle, who was like villainized. I mean, not that she needs to be, but she sucks. But Meghan Markle's and Harry left England, and their whole scandal in the book that came out and all this shit with them. So he could have been Me Too then, like he was getting hammered, but they saved him, and his mom, like he was her favorite, whatever it was, like that's what they say. But him being stripped of his title, that's all right. Is this enough? Does this satisfy the mob, right? And, and whether he's being used as a distraction, he's got to take one for the team. They probably have already given him the deal he's going to get, right? Like this, this is what you got to do. You're just going to be humiliated. And this is what, you're going to, whatever you get from here. Whatever prison he has is going to, I don't know what kind of cushy prisons they have, but I'm sure they have them. And I don't know if, where he's going. And so, this is all, they're trying to do the least amount of damage, right? They're trying to say, okay, is this enough, right? Is this going to satisfy the, because their tabloids there are fucking horrific, right? They're fucking way worse than our shit here. I mean, all that stuff. And so, we'll see how this plays out. But, if it comes to Mossad, that's like the big thing, right? If there's a big piece here, a big chunk of accountability, it'll involve Mossad. Because that means that Israel was spying on the fucking royal family, and that's fucked. Like, that's going to be a big deal.
Asked questions as of yet, and where has he been asked these questions? What location has he been taken to? What do we actually know right now? Well, what
absolutely nothing, according to you.
Know is Mr. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, former Prince Andrew, who only earlier this month was forced out of the royal residence, pushed into his brother's residence, the Sandringham estate, which is currently being searched by police, has now faced a watershed moment, really, not just for himself, but for the royal family and really for this country at large, being arrested now.
All right, so that's that. But, it's a step in the right direction. Okay, so we're going to get to Ghislaine Maxwell's puppy privileges in a moment. That's hilarious. Evil. And then I watched some things on TV. One thing I'll show you that after the Ghislaine thing. But there's two more things about Prince Andrew here that are very telling.
That's right. It is his birthday. Yes. The timing is certainly interesting.
Oh, they got the guy in his birthday. That's a big fuck you. Plus, it's his 66th birthday, it is interesting. My wife told me that, and I just confirmed it on ChatGTP. So, there's that.
There, Hillary, we've heard a range of reactions to this arrest. Let's watch some of what we've heard.
Honestly, nothing's going to happen to him, really, if you think about it. He's fully protected by his family.
He'll probably disappear to some country where he won't be extradited.
I thought he'd go into hiding and get away with it, so I'm pleased.
Hearing that from a member of the royal family is really, it's the last straw, isn't it, really?
Hearing it from the royal family, it really is the last straw, really. What? That guy's quintessential British accent there. So that's interesting.
What kind of reaction are you seeing and hearing there? I'm hearing that word. I guess I would sum it up in one word there.
Talked, right? Talking? Who's this dude? Is the word talking?
When I say pleased, that lady who said that, I think certainly poll numbers have shown that the British public overall, something around 28 to just over 30% of the public has been pleased with the way the royal family have handled this to date. And I will say, it's Prince William who, from the outset, had zero tolerance for any of this. He wanted his titles stripped. He wanted his honorary titles removed. He wanted him as far away from Windsor as possible, and he was behind the ousting of former Prince Andrew from Royal Lodge up to Norfolk at Sandringham. So I think it's always better late than never, Anna. That's what I would say, but they're doing the right thing now. That's what's important, and this is what will save them. And it's analogous to, remember when former Queen Elizabeth was up at Balmoral when Princess Diana died, and she came back to London and eventually went on air and spoke from her heart.
And how she murdered that bitch, right? It's not better late than never, but it's better than America's doing right now, right? So, in terms of, they've gotten some heads in England. What? All right.
The royal family has issued a statement, and it's notable because it came out very quickly and it was written in the King's hand.
Wait, he doesn't use voice to text like the rest of us, right? The King's hand. It was written in the King's hand. The King hand wrote this fucking thing.
So he tried to get ahead of this, and this is what he said: "I've learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office, notably not calling him his brother, trying to create that distance from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor."
Holy fuck, he's no longer his brother, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, right? I mean, as bad as the Epstein stuff is, and as bad, of course, the royal family is guilty of a lot of shit. You look at that elephant pin on this piece of shit. The British, they colonized Africa, and with the ivory trade, and they did so much damage to these animals, the rhinoceroses and the elephants, and these, I guess to do hippos' teeth. I don't know if they did it with the hippos, but they did it with the rhinoceroses and the elephants with their ivory, their horns, and the ivory trade, right? And just all the fucking, big game hunting, all the bullshit they did. And in India as well, right? They had elephants there. And then he's got the fucking balls to wear an elephant pin after all the fucking, just all the damage they've done. But he just knifed his fucking brother, right? I mean, holy shit. You might dislike your family members, but they're still your family members. Like, they are that to you, right? You may not ever talk to them again. You might have all kinds of negative feelings. I mean, there could be abuse. There could be any number of reasons for this. But, they're always your family. There's always a love bond. Like, you should feel love for them. Love is not a choice. Love is always there. Like, people, these stupid dating shows, these, like The Bachelor. I'm just trying to find love. I'm going to give love one more chance. Love is something that should be there all the time. People should be exuding love all the time. Even if you don't like somebody, there's love there. There's love with your significant others, your people in your life. You spend enough time with them. There's a love bond. Maybe some sort of past life, maybe something that transcends this incarnation. There's love there. My brother was like, in some ways, a second father for me. He's a mentor in various ways. He influenced what I do now. Like, he was an original truther. Interesting guy, Vietnam vet. I lived with him and his family. My nephews were like my little brothers for a long period of time. My brother and my mom were the only two that did the Sajmarg meditation. My brother's still doing it, in terms of heartfulness, but, he can't reconcile this thing with Dodgy. He did some stuff where he wasn't there for me. I didn't feel like he had my back. There's some jealousy there, whatever it was. And now with the thing where he's embracing Dodgy, this guy, I mean, it's a falling out. And my brother did some fucked up shit over the years. He had a sexual addiction. He cheated on his wife for a number of years. He left his wife for his mistress, if you want, or skank, crazy skank, whatever you want to say, on his son's birthday, and his son was still kind of pissed. I mean, he'll be pissed about that forever. And my brother did a lot of shit that's like you just can't, there's no justification for it. A lot of mistakes, and we haven't talked in years. I mean, there's just probably I'd probably never talk to him again. We'll see, unless he's on his deathbed and he calls me or some shit like that. But I told him I'm not talking to anybody that's with Dodgy because he's going to try to talk me out of it. I don't want to. He doesn't know how to and there's more to it than that. But he's still my brother, right? I still love him. He's my brother. Like they're just always there. My brother was 17 years older than me. They were closer in age, and he just fucking knifed the guy, right? He's calling him by his name. They stripped him of his title. Sure, you're gonna fucking maybe even goes to jail. But given all the shit that the British fucking royal family has done over the years, I mean, it's not like they're wonderful people. It's just that he got caught on the wrong side of Jeffrey Epstein, right? And then all the rest of that stuff. So brutal. Fucking just absolutely fucking knifes him here. I mean, you would say my brother, and you just do it because who gives a shit what people think? Like it's just, you're not responsible for your brother's actions, right? You don't have to apologize for him. You don't have to. It's like people think that, and maybe you want to defend him, whatever it might be, but it's not necessary, right? You just, support is support, and even when people do bad shit, there's some people in your life you're there to support them, even if they do fucking criminal behavior, they do, whatever it might be. You're just there to be, what's your relationship with them, right? Not that you're justifying what they do. I mean, everyone's so worried now with the internet of supporting people and, speaking up for somebody and just, cutting ties with somebody. Like, he's your brother, bro. Like, fucking, you just can't, like, I'm not going to call him my brother anymore. I'll just refer to him by his new fucking non-Prince name after we've stripped all this fucking bullshit from him for stuff that all of us do in one way or another, right? And so, just absolutely fucking brutal.
What now follows is the full and fair and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. Let me state very clearly, says the King, the law must take its course. As this process continues, it would not be right to say any more. To be fair, they can't say any more because they don't want to prejudice what might turn out to be a trial. And bear in mind, the King is the head of the judiciary, and Andrew's already being accused of abusing his position. If the King were to do so as well, it could be catastrophic for the monarchy. Also bear in mind that the police will now have access to all of Andrew's communications.
Okay, so there's that. Let's go to Ghislaine Maxwell here.
More outrage building among Jeffrey Epstein's victims as we learn that his convicted co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, is reportedly seeking a commuting of her sentence from President Trump.
Spit it out, Chris Jinxing.
That's according to a whistleblower who also gave House Democrats details about how Maxwell's move from federal prison to a prison camp has come with some extraordinary perks.
What are those perks?
What we've just learned
Oh, not this fucking guy. Oh, this guy fucking... I thought he had cancer. What fucking...
that she has been receiving basically club fed or Trump hotel style treatment, concierge style treatment. She's had meals delivered to her cell, basically room service.
Boom, room service, okay.
Prison. She gets to use the exercise facilities.
She gets to exercise, fucking, like just like everyone in prison.
Whenever she wants. She's got special arrangements where she's working with the warden to send materials to her defense team. It's an extraordinary situation.
Add to that one more perk for the convicted sex offender, puppy time.
Puppy time!
According to the whistleblower, an inmate who trains puppies to become service dogs was instructed to provide one to Maxwell for a time so she could play with the puppy, even though neither inmates nor staff are ordinarily allowed to pet the service dogs in training.
Holy shit. She's compromising service dogs with her fucking evil witch-like fucking energy. She got puppy privileges.
Joining me now, an attorney representing 11...
Boom, all right. So fucking puppy privileges for Ghislaine. Okay, so I want to end with an AI thing here. And then I got to go to a voiceover. I got a few more things to say about, whatever, all of it. But, the reason Trump, you remember Trump, well, not remember, I put this meme up, maybe 2 videos of Trump saying he protected Hillary, right? And, we know he protected her. And he admitted it. He promised to lock her up to his dumb fuck followers, but then when he was elected, he said, no, that played well during the primary, during the election, not so much now. The reason Trump didn't lock Hillary up, and the reason these people don't lock each other up, is because once you start locking up one of these people, they're all fucking criminals. And once you take down one member of the royal family or one person like, Jeffrey Epstein and some of these other people, the dominoes can begin to fall, right? Because they're all guilty of criminal offenses, and they're all, there's implications. Any one of them, if you looked at them, could go to jail. Any of these so-called elites, there's politicians. And they don't want to start sending each other to jail, right? If you send somebody to jail on your side, then when the other side gets into power, they send you to jail, right? So this is like a kind of an unwritten understanding. And Trump felt like they violated that understanding, the Democrats, and he knows he's getting old, so he doesn't care about his people around him that will have to bear the fucking burden of Trump's criminal behavior, right? Even his kids. He's very selfish that way. And so, but he doesn't like to see someone like Ghislaine. Like people that you know and hang out with, they're your people. And when you see them go to jail, you're like, well, hey, that could happen to me, right? And so, that's what this is all about. Puppy privileges. They'll say all this stuff about how horrible somebody is, but they won't fucking, they don't really want to see any consequences because it will come back to them, and they always think about, how's this going to affect me? Which most people do, but they do it on a level that's obscene, right? They're just so selfish. Like they'll destroy the whole world before they suffer the consequences that, their God justified consequences.
Some top artificial intelligence experts say they are becoming increasingly concerned over the threat posed by the technology. They're warning everything from the global economy to how we organize society could fundamentally change. Last week, the former head of safeguard research at AI company Anthropic bluntly warned that the world is in peril. And in a new piece in Axios, senior AI reporter Madison Mills says warnings from industry insiders are becoming ever more dire. She's with us right now. Good to see you. So you're saying the last few weeks have been a watershed moment for the AI industry. To what degree?
That's exactly right. We've seen a lot of developments happening with the AI technology itself very quickly. So that was kind of the start of the roller coaster here. We had the release of a new model from OpenAI, a new model from Anthropic, and also the release from Anthropic of Claude Code, which really shook up the software industry. All of these updates combining to paint a very clear picture for people inside of these AI labs that this technology is getting better much faster than even the top tech experts in the country had originally anticipated. Then at the same time, you have a lot of these experts coming out and people who are working on this technology resigning and then issuing op-eds, posting on social media saying that they have concerns about whether or not this technology is in the best hands right now at the companies that have resigned from.
Yeah, all right. I have, let me show you this. There's a clip. Hopefully this doesn't get copyrighted. This is one of the things it could, but I don't think it will. That somebody sent me on Facebook to go along with this. Okay, so somebody sent this to me on Facebook, and this ties to what this woman's saying here, right?
So this is my cute little security turret. It automatically tracks the closest face, and the little PCB he's wearing on the top. Well, if I turn the status LED on remotely from the app, it arms the system and he'll shoot Orbeez. The problem? Judgment Day is coming because he armed himself.
He armed himself, right? This is how it begins.
I was just minding my own business, eating a cookie, grabbing a Red Bull. You can't not look at him because he's so cute. But then as I started to walk away, he took a shot.
Holy shit. He's got some fucking serious firepower there.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
So the thing armed itself. It just decided to shoot the guy. And that's his creator. Like, that's the guy who's like, so like they have a system in which he can be armed remotely, but he just said, fuck it, I'm shooting this motherfucker. I don't care. Like, he made that decision on his own. So if that's the case, right, then think about all the other things that can be done as this AI takes over more and more shit, right? They start making decisions on their own. And some of the times they're training the AI to make decisions on their own. So there's that. Okay, I wanted to say a little bit more about health, but first, I haven't read the comments yet for yesterday. I'm going to do that and see if there's anything worth talking about. I think I have one already that I was going to say something about. But, this thing with these guys, these so-called elitists, once the dam breaks and, people their consciousness is veiled, right? I've always said that there's this level of when people go mob, grasshoppers turn into locusts. Like, they rub their legs together. So many of them, they're like overpopulated, and they start rubbing their legs together, right? They're led, accidentally, because there's so many of them. It's like there's a horde of them. And then, when there's so many of them, they swarm. Like, they just go, well, we got to get the fuck out of here. We got to, there's not going to be enough food, so we're going to starve here, right? And it's, they're overpopulated. So they swarm, and they just go from one place to another, devouring everything. And then, there's more and more of them. So it becomes this, it's like it triggers something biologically in them, the overpopulated state. And, people have this, they go apeshit when there's a mob mentality. It even happens after, like, celebrations when teams lose or win, or, during power outages and shit like that. But it certainly happens politically, and you have this with revolutions. And, people just get pushed to a tipping point, and like these ideas just, there in seed form. And for the most part, people are sitting there, what I was saying about veiled consciousness. They don't believe that these elitists can be held accountable, because they really can't, right? The system's rigged against them. They play by a different set of rules. But then all of a sudden, there's some shit comes out, and everyone's like, hey, you guys, you gotta take one for the team. And that's what they're doing in England. I mean, unless this is some sort of other plan here, they realize they want to save the royal family. They better fucking, bury this motherfucker, this defrocked, shunned Amish. Virginia Giuffre was the name of the girl, right? I couldn't remember earlier. And that whole thing that happened. And, people, it's been stewing for a while, and now people are just like over it. They got to serve up a sacrificial lamb, but, sometimes it takes more than that. It takes a whole, like, changing of the guard. It takes a, burning it to the ground, right? We see this when, every 4 years, people are pissed at the current president. Sometimes it's 4 years, sometimes it's 8 years, and they want a whole new, they come in with a landslide for the other party. The other party gets both houses and, gets the Congress and gets the presidency in some sort of, like, landslides type of statement, right? But really, it's just a condemnation of the previous administration. At some point, people are like, well, it's everybody. It's a whole fucking political system. We want to revamp. That's why they have this, you have outsiders. And so you see this now, and once that starts happening, all these motherfuckers get rattled. Because, they thought that they were, like, indestructible, and then they see, wait a minute, the fucking mob might come for us. And it's just like a switch is flipped. Like I said, the year of accountability. And it goes far beyond this, Epstein stuff and the rest of it. We'll see how it plays out over time. The thing I want to say about the health stuff, in the Sajmarg system, the second master of the system documented all these spiritual points that exist in a human being. And, like, there's a point inside somebody where they don't have to breathe. Like, if you could access that spiritual point, your physical body doesn't have to breathe. And there's some kind of point that you can teleport yourself, right? You can, move from one location, like you're in Star Wars, Star Trek, the teleportation machine. And so in the Sajmark system, powers and things that are to do with material powers and material life are to be ignored because we're just supposed to be spiritual. Like, people want to make their lives easier, and a lot of people enter into spirituality for some material gain. And, it isn't a vow of poverty or, like, in the Sajmark system, you're still supposed to be, doing your best in the material world, contributing in whatever way. And if you're going to be wealthy, if that's a part of your destiny or part of your service, then so be it, right? But, focus on the material to, sacrificing your material life to advance spiritually is the main thing. But there are these spiritual points. And of course, they're not, people, imagine if people didn't have to breathe, like, or, they could teleport themselves. It'd be like a crime spree, right? Like, there's all these things that exist in people where it could make their lives completely different. But they'd misuse them, right? They would use them for criminal activity or whatever it is. So that's why, things are withheld. And, when we evolve into something, complete human being that's in service of God, then you can have the discipline to have things like that you'd utilize for in the appropriate context and appropriate, circumstances, based in God's orders. But, in terms of physical health, everyone has their, like, death date. Like, you have something, and there's early exit points that people can choose to leave early. Maybe there's some, I don't know, like, I don't say accidents, but some, some things that aren't necessarily planned ahead of time. I don't think that happens very often. But, we go through these moments in our life where you're like, you realize, hey, I might die here. I might die. Like, it happens to everybody, where death is like, hey, I could possibly die. Sometimes you get sick. Sometimes it's, something else, something like that, an accident or so a loved one dies all of a sudden, and you realize, the fragility of life, and, how unpredictable it is, and how it's not something that people can control. But those times are always, like, good. They're like, they can reinvigorate you. Like, they can make you clear your head, and you think about what's important, right? You change your, it gets you out of a rut, and it wakes you up a little bit. It's like, it's a positive thing. Okay, let me check to see if there's any comments here. Okay, so really not any comments. Most of them were positive comments, and one person wrote my obituary. It wasn't negative or anything, but this wasn't. I mean, but it reminded me of something, and I meant to say this at the beginning of the video. Maybe I'll come back and say this again in 2 days in the beginning of the next video. Hopefully, I'll remember. But you can die any moment now because of COVID, right? Like, you have young people who die suddenly. We've died suddenly was a term, what you guys remember, all this stuff. Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, all the other stuff I was talking about. Oh, yeah, there's a comment here I want to get to. This will be a good one. And I'll get to that in a second. But, and I was saying this to my wife, we live in a time where people are dying of physical, their hearts just stop, young people that you would never expect because of COVID. And, it's not like it's hitting everybody. I don't know what percentage of people. It's not some huge percentage, but it exists, and that's going to be more prevalent in the near future. We're going to a time where, at some point in the near future, there'll be more people dying than being born. Like, that's when the population reduction kicks in, and it'll change. The energy will just shift. It'll feel different to live on planet Earth when that happens. Like, when we have, instead of growing as a species, we'll be shrinking. Like, we'll be going in the wrong direction. And there'll be a lot of things along with that. And, it'll change the way that human beings experience the world and life. And so there's that. And so this person wrote, you don't know what you're talking about with keeping the Sabbath. Jesus told his followers to keep God's God said, remember to keep the Sabbath. It's the fourth commandment, but you are a New Age Gnostic, so you listen to Deepak and Kudalali Kumbaya. Neither of those things are true, right? See, that's like, I know what you do. Like, I know your bullshit book, and I know your, which you don't read. Like, this person doesn't read. Like, they have, maybe they have the commandments, but if they read, they don't understand. This is a dumb fuck, right? Enjoy the New World Order, the person says, with 3 laughing emojis. you are a New Age Gnostic, so you listen to Deepak and Kundalini Kumbha. Yeah. See, like, you're putting me in a category that I don't belong in. And I don't care. You know, it doesn't affect me, but it shows you're like a dumbass, right? Because you can't, like, debate what I do. You can't criticize what I do because you don't know what it is, right? Like, I know what you do because I did it. Like, I was a Christian. I was a Catholic. I went to church. I understand the teachings, and I want to understand how Christianity works. And I grew up in a Christian system, and I have plenty of Christians who come here, right? And I know the various Christians. I know this from, you know, my own experience, and I've done spirituality, which you haven't done, which is connecting to the divinity within me. But it has nothing to do with the New Age system. The New Age system, you know, it's the Oprah Winfrey. You know, you become spiritual. You look for spiritual ancient teachings from India or somewhere else, Western teachings, or, you know, ancient Native American teachings, or whatever it might be. Shamanism, whatever. And then you take those things and you try to use them to make your life better. That has the opposite is what I've been saying in this whole video. In the Sajmark system, your material life is sacrificed for your spiritual evolution. And it has nothing to do with like New Age bullshit. Like it's ancient stuff that's, you know, that's like, it is a new thing, but it's not New Age, right? It's something that takes discipline and sacrifice and, you know, commitment. That's why people quit all the time. And so, you know, you don't know that. Like, I know your thing and your dumbass stuff, and I know, you know, I can see through your book. Like, you know, there's good things in it, but then I see how the thing's been warped and twisted, and, you know, it certainly isn't the pure message of Jesus. And even if it was, Jesus' message is fairly remedial. And enjoy the New World Order. All right, so, you know, I mean, you guys understand. I talk about this all the time. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely born from the Apocalypse. In the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.